Look at the state of this plant. On death's door, isn't he, the poor little mister? Well, the thing is, this is all by design. Yes, you heard me correct. This is all a not so mad little experiment I'm doing to get the absolute best out of him further down the line. And if you have this plant, I recommend you do the same. This is Ox, my apparently dead Oxalis triangularis, otherwise known as purple shamrock. When in rude health, this guy is an absolute stunner with beautiful, delicate purple leaves and tiny pink and white flowers. The trouble is, getting it in rude health can be a bit of a challenge. Usually it looks like a straggly mess in my house. Well, that was until I discovered this nifty little trick for getting the absolute best out of it. And the best part is, you get to watch your little purple buddy rise like the second coming of you-know-who and nurture him like the plant parent you always dreamed you'd be. Very rewarding. So what's the deal then? How on earth does killing this plant get the best out of it? Surely I've gone mad, right? Well, firstly, this isn't actually killing the plant. It's sending it into a forced dormancy. Think of dormancy like hibernation, but for plants. Just like a big grizzly will stop terrorizing the woods during the winter months and take a giant nap to conserve energy, lots of plants will do pretty much the same thing. And they always come out stronger on the other side. Alocasias are known for this of course, but so too are oxalises. It tends to happen with plants that grow from bulbs in the soil. The leaves die back to allow the bulbs to conserve energy during the lack of light and warmth of winter, and come spring new leaves emerge and the plant is all the better for it. Now this doesn't actually happen every year with Oxalis. They normally muddle through for a few years before giving up one year with the leaves dying back. But I have found that forcing it into dormancy at the end of every summer, especially in my dark and cold climate, results in a better plant the following spring and summer. And I'm going to show you the full process from dormancy to new life next year. So how do we even force dormancy without killing it then? Well, thankfully it's dead easy. Excuse the pun. You literally stick it somewhere cool and dark and forget it exists for months. What's easier than that, eh? Maybe you do that already with a couple of plants, but this time it's all by design, with no guilt. Yay! So carry on with the plant even if you do get some funny looks from his friends. You know better than them. Mrs. Sheffield nearly threw mine out thinking I'd killed yet another plant, but luckily I stopped her just in time. Phew! I keep mine behind my telly in my living room because it's a nice dark and cool spot for it to just do its thing, but Mrs. Sheffield just assumed I'd messed up again. And don't water it during this time. Doing so will wake it up and we don't want that. It should basically look as bad as it possibly can. A true beast from all your worst nightmares. And you'll see just how dry the soil of mine is in a jiffy. So I move mine to the lonely corner when it starts to look like a straggly mess at the end of summer. It might be a bit different for you based on your climate, but it's normally October for me. Basically, when you're sick of the sight of it, send it to the naughty corner for it to chill out. You'll see the leaves go crispy and gnarly and it will look like an absolute dog's dinner. You might be tempted to cancel the experiment and try and nurture it back to life early, but trust me, leave it as it is until spring. He'll thank you for it. Right, getting it out of dormancy is when the fun really begins and you can start to get some pride and joy out of your work. I start this process at the end of winter or very early spring, normally around the end of February. There's no hard and fast rule here though, it will depend on where you live. I just like to give it a chance to rise from its slumber nice and early so that I can enjoy the foliage for longer in summer. So it's about 4 months after I sent this bad boy to sleep. And as you can see, mine looks like an abomination. A true specimen of how not to look after your plant. But this is fine, it's how it's meant to look, trust me. What's the Sheffield May plants mantra? They always grow back, they always grow back. Now remove the leaves and whatnot because we're not keeping any of that. Tip it over and empty the contents onto a tray or something. And look at just how dry this soil is. My oh my, drier than the Sahara, crunchier than a bar of crunchy. Anyway, you now need to sift through the debris and collect all the little bulbs that have been lying dormant for months. How many you've got will depend on how old your plant is and whether it's had a chance to grow lots in the soil. And the beauty of these things is that it really doesn't matter if they break apart a bit. They'll still be viable bulbs just fine, so no need to be too delicate. And sift through the soil carefully, you don't want to miss any. That would be a waste. Lob everything into the bin, apart from the bulbs of course. and then grab some nice fresh soil and fill up your pot about halfway. I'm using a nice chunky mix from Cybertanica. You can bag yourself a 10% discount on all their soils and other bits with the code in the description. Check it out. And make sure your pot has drainage holes. You really don't want these guys sat in a swamp. Now just simply pop the bulbs in and top up with more soil so the pot is nice and full. You can of course pot up into multiple pots to get more individual plants, but I found you do need a fair few bulbs to get a decently bushy plant. Not enough and it will look a bit sparse, so I'm chucking everything into the same pot. Plus I haven't got the space for any more plants anyway. And don't fret about which way is up and which way is down either. The plant somehow figures this out itself. Just chuck them in and let nature do its thing. Give the whole thing a good drink so that all the soil is nice and wet, and pop it somewhere nice and bright. I'm putting mine under these Sansi grow lights because I'm actually starting this process earlier than I should to get this video out in time. And Sansi grow lights really do make things nice and easy. Have a look in the description for a 15% discount by the way. From that point, don't be too carefree with the watering. And that just means don't keep watering every couple of days and keeping the soil soggy. They don't particularly like wet soil. It can actually send them back into dormancy somehow. I'm not sure how, but that's what I read. Just keep the soil moist, and that means watering when the soil has dried out somewhat. I use my trusty moisture meter of course, which is listed in my Amazon store by the way, and I water when the probe reads 2. Best invention ever by the way. For gardening folk anyway. Now it's just a case of playing the waiting game and celebrating a new life when it shows its face. And through the power of TV, let's go back to the future for an update from future Mr. Sheffield. Thank you very much Marty. In truth, I didn't have to go that far into the future because this is only 2 weeks later and we can already see the first signs of life. I just love the way these things pop out from the soil. They almost look like swans dipping their heads into the water. How poetic. When you see this only a couple of weeks after repotting it, you know you're onto a good thing. Just another week later and those 2 swans have been joined by some of their buddies and are now showing themselves off fully. So we're looking pretty good. Having it under these grow lights really does allow them to put a growth spurt on. Link in the description for the ones I'm using by the way, along with a code for a 15% discount. Right, I've teased you enough. Let's fast forward some more to show you the finished article. And boom, here we are just 2 weeks later and my oh my, what a specimen we have here. Tons of growth has come out and we now have a lovely full bushy Oxalis. Exactly what we wanted. Let me know what you think in the comments. I must say, this guy is one of my favourites when in rude health. And the funky thing about this plant is what it does at night time. It closes its leaves up like it's going to sleep and then wakes up again in the morning. Pretty neat. I like to sit there on an evening and watch him do it. It's the small things that make my life interesting I guess. And look, you can start to see the flowers already coming through too. That's when you know you're a true plant Jedi master, my plant friend. A word of caution when you get to this point though. They hate to have wet feet. Keep them in soggy soil and you risk them going back into dormancy prematurely. So be careful with your watering. In fact, I'd watch this video next all about 10 watering mistakes you might be making to really make sure you get it spot on. And subscribe to the channel for more fun.